Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to SafeDefend Live. It's Friday morning. It's almost summer. Notice the good tan. Spent some time at the beach for meetings a couple weeks ago. Fun stuff. Now, while I'm going to talk about fun stuff like going on the lake and having fun and being safe and being secure and checking your surroundings out, Doc's going to talk about summer safety in the form of baselines and threat assessments. Because while Doc is fun, he's extremely intelligent. He's going to share
I
things
might,
with us that will keep us safer in the summer.
yeah, I might be kind of smart, but I definitely don't have the tan. So I have yet to do that. So I'm a little jealous, but I'll be out there anyway because summer is around the corner. I wanted to just as a kind of reminder to everybody, we're getting ready to break for summer. Time to have fun, get out in the sun, go to the swimming pool, go to the beach, whatever it is that you do, over family vacation or summer break, school break, whatever. And this is going to go out really not just, we talk a lot about, school, workplace, and targeted violence and active shooters.
Yeah.
But even if we don't have that, just, basic personal safety and kind of expanding this concept of threat assessment for personal protection,
Yep.
not so much waiting for that, active shooter to come into the school or workplace or, wherever you might be. And so this is more or less kind of like a reminder, but I kind of want to give, I don't know, kind of like a restaurant example, something that you might happen if you're out with your family, just as a way to kind of illustrate some of these concepts.
Hey, Doc, can I set the scene for this? I like this a lot.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so, so you want to see New York City? You want to go to the Big Apple, right? And you may like Italian food, and you may be in the Italian section of New York City, and you may go to a restaurant owned by a family in New York City. How do you handle that, Doc? Because it's an Italian family in New York City in the summer
Well, first
eating
off, I'm
pasta.
Italian. First off, I'm Italian and I love Italian food, and that sounds like a great place to be. But it's a great example in New York City, given the political climate and things
Yep.
going on there. I think that's a great place to start. So here's basically the concept, and it's very, very simple. Okay. The thing to understand is that there are only a few things you can do when you run into some sort of potential violence or threat. Okay. And it doesn't have to be an active shooter. It could be just anyone trying to mug you, anyone just causing you conflict or whatever. And in these situations, there are only four things you can do. You can either avoid it, you can escape it, you can evade it, or you can engage it. That's it. And so we basically, if we focus on what those things mean, and then what do we need to do in understanding baselines and anomalies to come to the best decision given what you're experiencing at the moment. And a lot of it has to do with where you're located, who you're with, if you're by yourself, you're with your family. All those are considerations where if you're by yourself, you might do something different than you would if you were with your family. Okay, because it's just you, and maybe you might have a tendency to want to take action where if you had your family, you wouldn't want to exactly take the same type of action, for example. So we look at things, the baselines and anomalies, and that's kind of the fancy nerdy way to saying what's normal and what's different. And so we learn to read rooms. We learn to read our environment. We kind of know what to expect. So let's say we go with the example that Dave just provided. We're talking about that Little Italy in New York. You want to
Yep.
get a meal at an Italian restaurant. Well, that's one of the best places in the world to go. I mean, it's got the culture, it's got the best, really good food, it's got the atmosphere and all this other stuff. So let's say that you're driving, okay, and you say, okay, well, I'm with the family, and we're gonna go to Luigi's meatball house or whatever it is in New York, okay. So we drive down and we see Luigi's, and we notice that there is some sort of a gang brawl occurring in the parking lot or right in front of the restaurant, okay. We're in our car, we're in there. So we are looking now. Do you expect to see a big fight with people, trying to kill each other at a restaurant in the parking lot? Is that normal? Well, obviously not. It's kind of a goofy example, but it's true. So instead of, getting out and kind of just walking into the restaurant, hoping you don't get hit, probably your best decision in that moment with your family is just to avoid it. And so when you avoid a situation, it means you've got the ability to just simply not be there. It's different than being in work or school because you have
Yep.
to be there. So avoidance is a little bit different. And so your threat assessment would be, hey, this is abnormal. Don't really need to eat Italian food, enough that I want to get hurt. So I'm going to avoid the situation. The two things that track, or the two things that you factor in is for avoidance is number one, situational awareness, right? And that's an example of situational awareness. You go there, it's like, oh, that doesn't look good. It's a fight. We'll move on. Also, area intelligence is another thing, and that's a fancy word for getting information about a place before you get there. So let's say that you are deciding your hotel room in New York City, and you get the family in there, and you got the radio on, and or you were watching TV before, and there is a big violent protest demonstration going on. Okay, and it's located on this street. And that street is near where you wanted to go. Rather, you're going to have to go through that street to get to the restaurant, or maybe the restaurant is on that street. That's an example of area intelligence. So it's a combination again of information that you can get, okay, like paying attention to the news, as well as your own five senses of looking at an environment and you're using your situational awareness. Okay. So that's the avoid piece. Okay. That's the safest. It's the least likely that you're going to get hurt yourself or the people that you love. So that's number one. So in this restaurant example, gang brawl in front or information of a violent protest, we just avoid the whole area and go do something else. Okay. Now, let's say that we were driving to Luigi's restaurant and everything looks normal. Nothing out there, no gang brawls, no demonstrations, whatever. It's like, good, man, this is going to be great. We're going to eat some good food tonight. So we park the car and we get the family out and we walk into the restaurant and we sit down. Okay. And we're eating. And because, again, going back to situational awareness, I happen to look, and when you're in the restaurant, now I'm looking again, what do you expect to see in a restaurant? Okay. Well, you expect to see people eating, talking, waiters, laughter, maybe, some conflict if the food was brought out that they didn't like or whatever. So you got your things that you consider normal. But let's say it's 100 degrees outside, it's the middle of summer, and a guy walks in and he's got a trench coat. Okay. And he comes in by himself and he's kind of looking around. Okay. That is an example of a abnormal situation or an anomaly. Now, as you're gaining that information, you might make the next potential decision, and that might be, which is our second option, is to escape. And what that simply means is we're escaping the situation. We're already there, something happens, and we need to get out. So we would already have looked at and noted our exits, noted where the exits lead to. Okay. Again, not being paranoid, but just being aware. And so we, as soon as we see this, it's kind of like we make that decision. Okay, everybody grab your stuff and let's go out that door and we'll, I'll come back and check things out or whatever we're going to do afterwards. So you escape that situation, right? Okay. Again, it's a decision you make based on your understanding of abnormal behavior, anomalies. What all that does is it dictates and gets you to a position to where you determine the level of risk, okay, whatever that is, what degree of that risk, and then that's going to dictate what you do, okay? So there's your escape. Now, let's say same thing. We go to the restaurant, no reason to not stop at the restaurant. We go in, we sit down, we start having our dinner, okay? Guy walks in with a trench coat. Maybe it's not maybe it's not 100 degrees out. Maybe trench coats are kind of normal for that place, right? So he doesn't seem to bother us, right? But as he's moving around, okay, he exposes a sawed-off shotgun, okay? And he starts looking around and he starts to lift that shotgun out, okay? Well, we can't really get up and escape. I mean, we could, but we're opening ourselves up to being a target, right? Because we don't really know what's going on. So maybe in that case, when we see that, I take my family, or we've already practiced this, or I just guide them. We drop to the floor under the table. Okay. We literally crawl to a bathroom that we noticed, right? Or that I've already scoped out, right? We zigzag, and let's say it's one of those older buildings and there's concrete pillars, and we're using those concrete pillars as cover as we're moving towards the bathroom. Okay. We get into the bathroom, there's a lock on the inside, we lock it, we barricade ourselves in the bathroom and wait until we feel it's safe. That is an example of evasion, right? You call it lockdown, you call it cover, concealment, whatever, but we're evading that person when we can't escape. Okay. So that might be the next thing that happens, right? So let's say, though, that this guy had an intent and decided, saw you go into the bathroom with your family. Okay. And he's decided that he's going to target you. So he comes up to the bathroom door, and with the shotgun, he blasts the door, breaks the lock, and then enters. Now we are into a situation where we have to engage that person. We can't escape, we can't avoid it, we can't evade him. So we have to have somewhat of a plan. Okay. Maybe we have a dedicated weapon with us. Maybe we're a concealed carry person. We have a gun. Okay. Maybe we have an improvised weapon. We got the steak knife that we took off the table, right, at the restaurant, or something that we can use to ambush that person, because that person is unlikely to expect that he would be ambushed since he's got the gun. It's kind of that
Yep.
psychology that he's got control. So you're there, you're away from the door, you get to that safer corner, the guy comes in and you ambush him. With a gun, it's just a matter of making sure you can divert that muzzle away from you or your loved ones, right? And then use whatever violence is necessary to stop him. And then once it's over with, then you do what's necessary, right? Obviously, going to call the police, make sure everybody's okay, and things like this. And that's an example of engaging. And so, in this great restaurant that we wanted to go eat, these are possibilities. These are possibilities if you're sitting in your, we go back to the traditional school shooter type stuff,
Yep.
okay? We can't avoid that because we have to be at school, but we can escape, run, we can evade, hide, and we can engage, fight, right? And we can do any one of those in any order depending on what the situation is. So you might be in your car, okay? You might be at work. You might be at the mall. You might be at a football game. You might be alone. You might be with your family. There might be a number of other things, but your context and your location determines what strategy you're going to take. So there's two things here. Your strategy is avoid, escape, evade, or engage. That's your strategy, depending on the situation. And your tactics are determined by what strategy you decide. And so if you know your tactics, whatever equipment you might have on you, that will then, dictate what you do to keep yourself and your family safe. And that's pretty much it. So go enjoy your meal.
So I'm going to add to this, and I think this is a really important discussion just in life in general. If you have kids, I'm going to offer you some training that I got when I was younger. It's kind of how I've lived my life, and it's called the ACT philosophy, ACT, ACT. And anything that happens in your life, you're going to assess the situation, consider your options, and take appropriate action. Right. So as an adult that's lived in the combat environment, even today at home, my family, we always assess our situation. Where are we? What are we doing? I go into the Italian restaurant. I see Big Lou in the back corner. Right. He's got the three-piece suit on, big old belly, eating his pasta, napkin in the thing, and then I see these two thugs come in that are kind of don't look normal, whatever else. I'm watching what's going on in the room, just going, okay, that's cool, interesting. Maybe something's there, maybe something's not. But at this point, I'm going, is it time to leave? Consider my options. Leave, run, hide, or fight. What am I going to do? And then I'll make a decision, take appropriate action. And everything we do, look at your situation, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to be paranoid. Just be aware. Be self-aware about what's around you and your family, what's going on. And regardless whether it's summertime or at home or school time or work or wherever you are, you should always be thinking this way. You should always have your head on a swivel and not let your guard down until you're in a place that you know you're completely protected, right? Because in today's world, we don't know what kind of crazy is out there. We don't know what people are going to do. We don't know what mental deficiency people are dealing with, right? So we owe it to ourselves and to our fellow citizens to be aware and when we see something, take appropriate action to handle it. Baselines are important. Awareness is important, but just have a really quick way to work into your daily life, the ACT philosophy. Now, we just flew back with my wife from a business trip down in Florida, and God bless her, she's trained well. When we sat down, she goes, "We're three rows from the exit." Good job. Because my family knows when you get on an airplane, how many rows are you from the escape hatch, the door. So when the plane fills up with smoke, you know where to go.
Right.
Now, most people aren't that weird, but we are, because I've been through a lot of training. I shared it with my family, but that's how we live our lives, and we're happy. We're not stressed out. We're not nervous. Don't worry about it, because we have a plan. We're always ready for the next thing that's going to happen, and we don't get surprised by stuff very often. So I offer it to you as you plan your vacation this summer and you have fun and you're enjoying your time off and you're at the beach doing whatever you do, or at the lake or wherever. Just make good choices. And the last thing I want to leave this with for us adults is, if you're going out and you're enjoying yourself and you have a few drinks, just realize you're not as sharp as you were once or as fast as you were. So be careful, do things in moderation, and be safe. So what do you think, Doc?
All good points.
All
100%.
right.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that, this episode of Safe Defend Live, Doc and Dave.